I'm here in my home studio in Estes Park, Colorado, and today I'm substituting my lunchtime tangle tutorial to teach you something near and dear to my heart, the Ukrainian Easter egg, or the Pysanky. I am doing this as the current horrific atrocities against the Ukrainian people unfold, as Russia continues to invade them in an unjustified and criminal war. Today I want to first introduce you to the Ukrainian Easter egg and its traditions, its cultural and historical background, and demonstrate later in a different tutorial how to make them. This is based on a class workshops I have given over the years that usually last 3 days and cost hundreds of dollars. But I'm putting this out there for free if you commit to helping me send prayers, well wishes, and good intentions to the Ukrainian people as you create these eggs. You'll understand what I mean when you see my presentation that we're going to do here in a minute. In the description below in my YouTube channel, you will find a link to a file that I share with my classes on the meaning of the symbolism, the colors, etc. It shows a bibliography so that you can go and research this even further. There are links to the supplies and where you can get them, and also what you need to set up your own workspace. And we'll be going through that again also here. During the process of creating these intricate eggs, rich in symbolism, it is common to weave in prayers and good intentions for those you are creating them for. It is also tradition to gift the eggs and not sell them. While we're creating these Ukrainian treasures, we want to pray for the protection of the people of the Ukraine as they so bravely fight for their homeland. We want to pray for President Putin to come to the table and negotiate a peace in the area, in the Ukraine, and even in the world. We also want to pray for all of those displaced refugees who are fleeing their homes by the millions now. So take a look at this presentation and learn some historical context, and hopefully you will be inspired to join me in creating Pysanky for peace. Thank you. The Pysanka, or Ukrainian Easter egg, is a traditional craft that dates back to ancient times. The name Pysanky comes from the verb pisati, and it means to write, and that's because the designs are not painted but rather written on the eggs with a beeswax-filled stylus called a kitska. This is only one of the several types of decorated eggs that are of Ukrainian tradition, but Pysanky are certainly the most renowned and intricate. Though we know Pysanky today as Easter eggs, the tradition goes back thousands of years and is rooted in paganism. As in many cultures, the Ukrainians worshiped the sun for its life-giving power and warmth before Christianity took hold in the region. And then one of the main deities was Daspol, the sun god. Birds were one of his favorite creations because they could get near him, but they were hard for humans to catch. So humans could, however, obtain the eggs. And that's how those eggs became magical objects to early man, symbolizing rebirth and earth. Since eggshells are so fragile, no Pysanky have been found from Ukraine's prehistoric periods, but ceramic eggs were discovered dating to the 5th back to the 3rd century BC. These eggs were ornamented in style called tropillion. They are named for the artifacts uncovered over a century ago from the archaeological diggings near the city of Tropillia. It's located south of Kiev. These eggs depict highly stylized, almost primitive animals, grains, geometric patterns, swirls, waves, and other subjects that occupied the daily lives and beliefs of the Tropillian people. Stone and clay versions of eggs decorated with horsetail plant in yellow and bright green patterns against a dark background were excavated from graves throughout the Ukraine. These are thought to be representations of the real decorated eggs like you see here. Many legends, superstitions, and folk beliefs are associated with Pysanky. My college roommate who introduced me to this art form told me a legend that is my favorite. Sue, my roommate, was a Russian major in college, and I a German art major. As part of her cultural introduction to Russia, she learned to make Pysanky already in high school, and she was taught then by an 80-year-old woman from her church who came from the Ukraine. I was lucky enough to learn about what she had taught Sue. According to the Ukrainians who live in the Carpathian Mountains in western Ukraine, the fate of the world depends upon the Pysanka. They believe that as long as the eggs are decorated, the world will exist. If the custom dies out, evil in the shape of a horrible serpent who is forever chained to a cliff will overrun the world. According to this legend, each year the serpent sends out his minions to see how many Pysanky have been created. If the number is low, the serpent's chains are loosened, and he is free to roam the earth, causing havoc and destruction. And I know who we're thinking of now. If the number of the Pysanky, however, increases and people make them more, the chains are tightened and good triumphs over evil for another year. So we are contributing to the war against evil by making these eggs, or more fittingly, the current war against the Ukraine. Ornaments and patterns found on the Ukrainian eggs have multiple meanings as they underwent a process of adaptation over time. In pagan times, the eggs were thought to harbor magical powers that would ward off evil spirits, guarantee good harvest, bring people good luck, a happy marriage, a long life, and so on. After Christianity became the state religion in the Ukraine in about 988, the interpretation of many symbols reflected the new beliefs. Some of the main motifs and their symbolic meaning I'm going to be telling you about both the pagan and Christian meanings, like the triangle here. The triangle in the pagan religion would mean elements of fire, air, and water, or birth, life, and death. Of course, for Christians, the triangle represents the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Curls, they represent defense and protection. Spirals, the mystery of life and death, as well as divinity and immortality. And they are also a symbol for trapping evil. Dots represent the tears of the Virgin Mary for the Christians, and for the pagans, stars and cuckoo bird eggs. Cuckoo bird eggs were also a symbol of spring. Bands on these eggs represent harmony, motion, infinity, and immortality. Lines and ribbons represent the thread of life or eternity. Crosses are for the earth and its arms representing the four cardinal directions. Of course, for Christians, the cross is representational for Christ who was crucified on the cross. The oldest and most important symbol of the Pysanky is the sun. Every cultural region of the Ukraine depicts the eight-sided star. The sun can also appear as a flower or a swastika, which is a broken cross. The women who created Pysanky drew their inspiration from the world of nature. Plant motifs represent the most common and popular designs associated with these ornamental eggs. They used highly stylized flowers, trees, fruits, leaves, and whole plants. Wheat, for example, represents the wishes for good health and a bountiful harvest. Flowers denote wisdom, elegance, and beauty as they express the feminine principle. A vinok, or garland of flowers, is often used in ornamentation, and it echoes the beautiful ceremonial garlands worn by the Ukrainian girls. Often 3 garlands are drawn in 3 circles around the egg, representing the 3 parts of human existence: birth, marriage, and life, just like with the triangle. And poppies are a beloved flower of the Ukraine that symbolize joy and beauty. Though not as popular as plant motifs, animals are depicted on the Pysanky, especially in those agricultural regions and regions of the Carpathian Mountains where people are so dependent on their animals. The symbols serve a double function, though. Not only do they endow the owner with the best characteristics of a particular animal, they also ensure that their own animals be bestowed with a long and productive life. Most animals were depicted in the abstract, as you see here on in this horse on the left. Horses represent strength, endurance, wealth, and prosperity, but they are also a sun symbol. The stag and the ram, also popular sun symbols, because they were believed to have carried the sun across the sky, represent leadership, victory, joy, and masculinity. Fish mean health and abundance, and of course Christ, as he was the fisher of men. Bees represent hard work and pleasantness, strangely enough, and they also represent all good insects that should not be killed. Color carries symbolic weight in the Pysanky as well as the patterns that decorate them. It was believed that the more colors that are on one decorated egg, the more magical power it brings to the owner. The symbolic meaning of color often differed from region to region, but this chart here that I made up represents the general beliefs. And Pysanky are made using a wax resist technique that's also known as batik. Here's a photo of my setup where I work on my eggs. Starting with the prepared white egg, the first lines of the pattern are drawn in wax. These lines will remain white, although they look like they're black now, just like this one. So all of those black lines that you see there are actually white. They've been covered up with the dark wax. Next, the egg is dipped into the next color, which is the progressively darker color. Most of the time, it's yellow for the traditional Ukrainian patterns. So if you're making complicated color combinations, you do have to have a knowledge of color mixing, basically. What I will be teaching you in my demo is just going to be the traditional egg that uses this a little bit more easy process. The egg is removed from the dye and gently patted dry with paper towels or a soft cloth. The parts in the pattern that should be yellow are drawn on next, which in this case would have been those little wheat sheaths that you see there and the dots. Those will remain yellow. And then the egg is dipped into the next darkest color, which would be normally orange. After about another 10-minute bath in the dye, the egg is removed and the orange lines are drawn onto the egg, and the process continues until you reach your darkest color, which is usually black. After the final dye bath, the egg is ready for the most exciting and magical step, removal of the wax. This can be done in different ways, but the tradition is to remove the wax by holding the egg in the side of a candle flame for 2 or 3 seconds or until the wax turns liquid and shiny. At that point, it is quickly and gently rubbed away with a paper towel. Your brightly colored patterns will be revealed before your eyes. The final step is to varnish your egg. You must be cautious never to use a water-based varnish or these dyes will run. All of your hours of work will go away. So it's very, very important not to use a water-based varnish. If you want to blow out your egg, this is the time to do it, after the shell has been strengthened by the varnish. I don't generally blow out my eggs, mainly because the egg itself inside the shell represents life and rebirth, and I'm very much a traditionalist. The other thing is, as the eggs age, the inside will be strengthened by that drying egg. However, a word of caution, if you do not blow out your eggs, you must store them in ventilated areas, and it's really wise to turn them ever so often because you want them to release the methane gas and not let it build up that will cause them to explode. And I have had many eggs explode on me, but I have also several eggs that are, well, I don't, but some of my friends that I gave them to have eggs that are nearly 40 years old. So they can last if you're very, very careful with them. Before I wrap this up, I wanted you to know that you can design your own eggs using either traditional symbols or your own drawings or a combination thereof. Those of you who are tanglers out there joining me today will note that many of the Zentangle patterns we know actually come from the traditional Ukrainian egg patterns. You can also try Zentangle patterns as I've done here for a more contemporary look, or here. So that's it for today. I want to wrap this up by reminding you to download my file because it is chock full of information. The next time we will delve into the process of making an egg one step at a time. So I look forward to seeing you then, and I wish you will join me for this very important project for peace in Ukraine. Thanks.